All episodes of A Trial by Podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only. Much to their parents' dismay, neither host is a lawyer, journalist, or investigator. Just two people with microphones and Wi-Fi. All actions discussed are alleged, and all parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. For the full legal mumbo-jumbo, check the show notes.
We'd like to add an extra note before we begin. While it may go without saying, we want to be clear. Kelsey and Emily are not mind readers. We don't know the defendant's private thoughts, emotions, or motivations. Any references to what someone may have been thinking or feeling are purely speculative and based on opinion, not fact. We are here to discuss the information we read, not to be the source of the information. While we thoroughly research every case we cover, we can't guarantee the veracity of every single detail. We strongly encourage listeners to do their own research and come to their own informed conclusions.
This episode is brought to you by Factor. Optimize your nutrition this year with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Factor's fresh, never-frozen meals are dietitian approved, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from 40 weekly options across 8 dietary preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Eat smarter at factormeals.com/listen50 and use code listen50 for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Factormeals.com/listen50. Code listen50. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. How can you free up your team from time-consuming office tasks? Amazon Business empowers leaders to not only streamline purchasing, but better support their teams so they can focus on strategy and growth. Free up your teams and focus on your future. Learn more about the technology, insights, and support available at amazonbusiness.com.
It's a real privilege to be able to travel and to see different places. Taking yourself out of comfortable positions and challenging yourself.
No one builds a legacy by standing still. Start your journey at remova.com.
I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Emily.
And this is A Trial by Podcast. So we've been going for a while now. We just finished recording part 1 and we're diving right back into part 2, even though you guys have to wait a week, losers. But I think with that being said, we're just going to dive right back into it because I can't move off this topic or I'm going to be confuzzled. So where we left off last week, Brock Turner had just been found guilty on 3 felony charges of sexual assault. And Chanel was vindicated. It was black and white on paper. She did not consent. This was sexual assault. And Brock's a fucking lying incel loser and we hate him. And yes. I think that's verbatim from the court statement.
Yep.
But
should have been.
Yeah, I think the first juror stood up and was like, we, the jury, solemnly declare
that this person can eat shit.
So after the trial, because during this whole trial and before, Chanel had stayed silent. She hid her identity. She didn't really, she testified, but she wasn't giving interviews. She was only answering questions that were being asked of the court. That is until the sentencing hearing in June of 2016, where she finally had the chance to address Brock Turner directly. And like I said last week, this left an indelible mark, not just on this case, but on the discussion around sexual assault in American society for sure. Now, she spent weeks leading up to this sentencing hearing crafting this victim impact statement. And it was basically a personal letter that she was going to read in court telling everybody what Turner's assault and this whole thing had done to her life. And this statement is 12 pages long. Now, 12 pages doesn't sound like a lot. Let me tell you, I'm on page 9. Now, that's because me and Emily are going off script so much. But if I write 12 pages, that's usually, if we're not going too far off script, that's an hour and a half episode. If you just were reading it word for word, maybe, I don't know how long that would take you to read out loud. But this is a long statement. And it is all in her book. You can find the entire thing online. It's published in a lot of places. I am about to read a lot of it to you. Things that stuck out to me. Every woman on earth needs to go read this victim impact statement. I will warn you, unless you're dealing with some PTSD surrounding sexual assault, then maybe not. Mm-hmm. But It will fuck you up for a bit after you hear it. And some people will cry listening to this. I cried reading it, and I'm going to try not to cry repeating it. It is incredibly well written. So yeah, with that being said, let's just get into it. But just know this is not the whole thing, and you should go read the whole thing. So she starts off very powerfully, saying, Your Honor, if it is all right, I'd like to address the defendant directly. You don't know me, but you've been inside me, and that's why we're here today.
Whoa.
I mean, goosebumps.
Fucking mic drop.
Sentence 1.
Woo.
So in her statement, she speaks of how she had learned about what had happened to her, saying, quote, in public news, I learned that my ass and vagina were completely exposed outside. My breasts had been groped, fingers had been jabbed inside me along with pine needles and debris. My bare skin and head had been rubbing against the ground behind a dumpster, while an erect freshman was humping my half-naked, unconscious body. But I don't remember. So how do I prove that I didn't like it? I thought, there's no way this is going to go to trial. There's witnesses. There was dirt in my body. He ran, but he was caught. He's going to settle, formally apologize, and we will both move on. Instead, I was told he hired a powerful defense attorney, expert witnesses, private investigators who are going to try and find details about my personal life to use against me, find loopholes in my story to invalidate me and my sister, in order to show that this sexual assault was in fact a misunderstanding, that he was going to go to any lengths to convince the world that he had simply been confused. I was not only told I was assaulted, I was told that because I couldn't remember. I technically could not prove it was unwanted. And that distorted me, damaged me, almost broke me. It is the saddest type of confusion to be told I was assaulted, nearly raped, blatantly out in the open, but we don't know if it counts as assault yet. End quote. I'm going to pause there for a second. Any thoughts on that?
Too many to get out.
You see what I'm saying about her writing?
Yeah.
Impactful writing.
Yeah, packs a punch, for sure.
In this next part I'm going to read, she is talking about a phone call that she had with her boyfriend that night. So when she had eventually told her boyfriend, Lucas, that about what had happened to her, he was upset with himself because she had called him that night and she was like just being cute, drunk, goofy, calling her boyfriend, you know? Oh, like, I miss you. And she said something about, she like left a voicemail on his phone that was played in court, something about how she was going to reward him the next time she saw him. And the defense used this as, oh, this promiscuous girl talking about giving sexual favors or whatever.
Because to her boyfriend who she's in a relationship with, not to a random fucking guy in the back alley of a fucking house.
Exactly. And she just said she was going to reward him. She didn't say anything like explicit.
Yeah.
And I get you're reading it. But so this is what she's referring to when she's talking about to listen to him. She's talking about her boyfriend because after she tells him what happened, he's talking about, oh my God, I knew you sounded drunk on the phone and I was worried about you, because he lived out of state at the time. So this is what she says about it. Quote, I sounded drunk on the phone because I'm silly and that's my goofy way of speaking. To point out that in the voicemail I said I would reward my boyfriend and we all know what I was thinking, I assure you, my rewards program is non-transferable, especially to any nameless man that approaches me. End quote. Damn.
Shit.
That, dude, literal,
I want that
you see those
tattooed on my
goosebumps?
ass. Like, that is fucking crazy.
Dude, my rewards
I love that.
I'm going to hit you with it one more time. I assure you, my rewards program is non-transferable, especially to any nameless man that approaches me. Duh.
Nobody could have said that better.
No.
Not anyone.
No. So, with poise and palpable anger, Chanel spoke directly to Brock, dismantling any notions that his actions were just a mistake or that alcohol was to blame. She painstakingly outlined the devastating impact the assault had on her, how it robbed her of joy, of confidence, and normalcy, how she had to explain to her younger sister what had happened, how she could no longer go about her days without fear or without shame. And across those pages, Chanel addressed not only Turner, but also the broader cultural attitudes that often silenced or blamed victims. She condemned the defense's tactics of highlighting her intoxication level and clothing choices, declaring that nothing she did that night warranted being violated. She described the humiliation of being examined and of hearing Turner's lawyers imply that she was at fault for being unconscious. She told the court, quote, his attorney constantly reminded the jury, the only one we can believe is Brock because she doesn't remember, end quote. She described how the trial itself had been a whole new trauma for her, saying, quote, after a physical assault, I was assaulted with questions designed to attack me. To say, see, her facts don't line up. She's out of her mind. She's practically an alcoholic. She probably wanted to hook up. He's like an athlete, right? They were both drunk, whatever, end quote. And that's what people were saying. That's some people were saying about this. And that's how the defense treated her. Now, of Brock's defense, Chanel told the court, quote, so 1 year later, as predicted, a new dialogue emerged. Brock had a strange new story, almost sounded like a poorly written young adult novel with kissing and dancing and hand-holding and lovingly tumbling onto the ground. And most importantly, in this new story, there was suddenly consent. 1 year after the incident, he remembered, oh yeah, by the way, she actually said yes to everything. So he said he had asked if I wanted to dance. Apparently I said yes. He'd asked if I wanted to go to his dorm. I said yes. Then he asked if he could finger me, and I said yes. Most guys don't ask, can I finger you? Usually there's a natural progression of things, unfolding consensually, not a Q&A. But apparently I granted full permission. He's in the clear. Even in his story, I only said a total of 3 words to him. Yes, 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 before he had me half naked on the ground. I'm going to repeat it for dramatic effect. Even in his story, I only said a total of 3 words. Yes, 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 before he had me half naked on the ground. So this story of consent he's telling, the only words he explicitly says that Chanel said to him are yes, are affirmative consent. She continues, quote, future reference, if you are confused about whether a girl can consent, see if she can speak an entire sentence. You couldn't even do that. Just one coherent string of words. Where was the confusion? This is common sense. It's human decency.
You want to know how we can educate men? Start with her fucking book. Or this fucking test.
Just this victim's impact statement.
Yeah.
Reading this for the first time is what I was like, I absolutely have to cover this case on the podcast.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I can't recommend a book more. She then continues, according to him, the only reason we were on the ground was because I fell down. Note, if a girl falls down, help her back up. If she's too drunk to even walk and falls down, do not mount her, hump her, take off her underwear, and insert your hand inside her vagina. If a girl falls down, help her up. End quote. Let's start the education there.
What a beautiful way to put that.
We all assumed that would be common sense.
You'd think.
But apparently it's not. Looking Brock in the eyes, she continues, quote, you are guilty. 12 jurors convicted you guilty of 3 felony counts beyond reasonable doubt. That's 12 votes per count. 36 yeses confirming guilt. That's 100% unanimous guilt. And I thought, finally, it is over. Finally, he will own up to what he did, truly apologize. We will both move on and get better. Then I read your statement. If you are hoping that one of my organs will implode from anger and I will die, I'm almost there. You are very close. This is not a story of another drunk college hookup with poor decision-making. Assault is not an accident. Somehow you still don't get it. Somehow you still sound confused. I will now read portions of the defendant's statement and respond to them. This is why I didn't read any of Brock's statements first, because first of all, fuck him. Second of all, she's breaking it down fucking point by point.
Yeah.
And I can't do it better than her. So here we go. And I'm going to stop saying quote unquote because we got a while of quotes. I think it'll be obvious, but if it's not, you can just email me because I'm not trying to plagiarize anybody's words, but I feel like you guys get the gist.
Yep.
So she says, you said you are in the process of establishing a program for high school and college students in which you speak about your experience to, quote, speak out against the college campus drinking culture and the sexual promiscuity that goes along with it, end quote. Campus drinking culture, that's what we're speaking out against? You think that's what I've spent the past year fighting for? Not awareness about campus sexual assault or rape or learning to recognize consent? Campus drinking culture. Down with Jack Daniels, down with Sky Vodka. If you want to talk to people about drinking, go to an AA meeting. You realize having a drinking problem is different than drinking and then forcefully trying to have sex with someone, right? Show men how to respect women, not how to drink less.
Oh,
Boom. Huzzah.
Huzzah.
I think we'll huzzah every point.
huzzah, motherfucker.
Drinking culture and the sexual promiscuity that goes along with that, like a side effect, like fries on the side of your order. Where does promiscuity even come into play? I don't see headlines that read, Brock Turner, guilty of drinking too much and the sexual promiscuity that goes along with it. Campus sexual assault. There's your first PowerPoint slide. Rest assured, if you fail to fix the topic of your talk, I will follow you to every school you go to and give a follow-up presentation. Huzzah.
Huzzah.
Dude, she's so epic. I want to be friends with her. I love her.
I know.
Because she's not only she's funny too. Like
yeah.
she's
She's like, I'm gonna fucking rip this guy a new one.
Yes, I love it, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Back into the quote. She says, lastly, you said, I want to show people that one night of drinking can ruin a life. A life. One life. Yours. Well, you forgot about mine. Let me rephrase for you. I want to show people that one night of drinking can ruin 2 lives. You and me. You are the cause. I am the effect. You have dragged me through this hell with you, dipped me back into that night again and again. You knocked down both our towers. I collapsed at the same time you did. If you think I was spared, came out unscathed, that today I ride off into the sunset while you suffer the greatest blow, you are mistaken. Nobody wins. We have all been devastated, and we have all been trying to find some meaning in all of this suffering. Your damage was concrete. Stripped off titles, degrees, enrollment. My damage was internal, unseen. I carry it with me. You took away my worth, my privacy, my energy, my time, my safety, my intimacy, my confidence, my own voice until today. When I see my younger sister hurting, when she is unable to keep up in school, when she is deprived of joy, when she is not sleeping, when she is crying so hard on the phone she's barely breathing, telling me over and over again, she is so sorry for leaving me alone that night. Sorry, sorry, sorry. When she feels more guilt than you, then I do not forgive you.
ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
This episode is brought to you by Greenlight. Get this. Adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/Spotify. Greenlight.com/Spotify.
That night, I had called her to try and find her, but you found me first. Your attorney's closing statement began, quote, her sister said she was fine, and who knows her better than her sister, end quote. You tried to use my own sister against me? Your points of attack were so weak, so low, it was almost embarrassing. You do not touch her. And that shows you, like, how much she loves her little sister and how affected her little sister and also her loved ones, but
she's
especially
like,
her little
bitches,
sister.
don't bring my little sister into this shit. You're the one that caused this. You're the one that fucking blew this whole thing up. And now you're going to bring my sister into this? Who was not, like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And they're trying to say, well, her sister thought she was okay, so it's fine. Because her sister said, like, last time she saw Chanel at the party, she seemed okay. She wasn't blacked out at the time.
Yeah.
So now you're going to try and put the guilt on her little sister.
Right.
Drinking has yet to define what he did to me as sexual assault. Yet he has re-victimized me continually, relentlessly. He's been found guilty of 3 serious felonies, and it is time for him to accept the consequences of his actions. He will not be quietly excused. He is a lifetime sex registrant. That doesn't expire. Just like what he did to me doesn't expire. Doesn't just go away after a set number of years. It stays with me. It's a part of my identity. It has forever changed the way I carry myself, the way I live the rest of my life. To conclude, I want to say thank you to everyone from the intern who made me oatmeal when I woke up at the hospital that morning, to the deputy who waited beside me, to the nurses who calmed me, to the detective who listened to me and never judged me, to my advocates who stood unwaveringly beside me, to my therapist who taught me to find courage in vulnerability, to my boss for being kind and understanding, to my incredible parents who teach me how to turn pain into strength, to my grandma who snuck chocolate into the courtroom throughout this to give to me, my friends who remind me how to be happy, to my boyfriend who is patient and loving, to my unconquerable sister who is the other half of my heart, to Alayla, my idol who fought tirelessly and never doubted me. Thank you to everyone in the trial for their time and attention. Thank you to girls across the nation that wrote cards to my DA to give to me. So many strangers who have cared for me. Most importantly, thank you to the 2 men who saved me, who I have yet to meet. I sleep with 2 bicycles that I drew taped above my bed to remind myself that there are heroes in this story. And finally, to girls everywhere, I am with you. On nights when you feel alone, I am with you. When people doubt you or dismiss you, I am with you. I fought every day for you. Oh my God. I fought every day for you, so never stop fighting. I believe you. As the author Anne Lamott once wrote, lighthouses don't go running all over an island looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining. Although I can't save every boat, I hope that by speaking today, you absorbed a small amount of light, a small knowing that you can't be silenced, a small satisfaction that justice was served, a small assurance that we are getting somewhere, and a big, big knowing that you are important. Unquestionably, you are untouchable, you are beautiful, you are to be valued, respected, undeniably, every minute of every day, you are powerful, and nobody can take that away from you. To girls everywhere, I am with you. Thank you.
That's a heavy one.
The reason this end part fucking hits me so much is like she's talking about the lighthouses. Lighthouses don't go running all over an island looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining. And she's saying, you know, I hope that by speaking today, you know all of these things. And what we are about to find out is justice is not done here for her. And she is a lighthouse. Mm-hmm. She is a lighthouse. She is shining. I am sure she has saved many boats. But it's just one of those things that it's like, you, at this point in time when she's giving the statement, it's so powerful. And it seems like justice is going to be done. And it's such a vindicating moment, not just for Chanel, but for all these other women who have been through something similar. And the fact that that doesn't end up being the case is very sad to me. And one thing I wanted to add about this is like that quote that she gives about the lighthouses, the whole lighthouses don't go running all over an island just looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining. I'm like, that's what I want to do with the podcast. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're the lighthouses. I think the stories are the lighthouses, and we're the motherfucker that's like, oh shit, lighthouse, like look over there, like pointing to it. We're like the person in the car.
We're the ADHD fucking squirrel.
Yes, we're like horsies. We're the girl in the car that says horsies.
There's
and then
cows.
You all get to see the horsies because we pointed it out.
Right.
So
but we don't actually like do very like, you know.
Yeah,
like,
we are definitely not the lighthouses, but we are the ones pointing out the lighthouses that maybe you wouldn't have seen without it. That's the goal of the podcast. And I don't know that fully makes sense, but it makes sense to me. So I hope it makes sense to you.
We're rolling with it.
Now, Judge Aaron Persky reportedly said nothing in response to Chanel's statement other than a polite thank you. But the impact of Chanel's words would not end in that courtroom. Shortly after the sentencing, the full text of her 7,000-word letter was published by BuzzFeed News and quickly went viral.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Huzzah.
Hell yeah, girlfriend.
Within days, an estimated 18 million people had read it around the world. Victims of sexual assault saw their own experiences reflected in Chanel's powerful testimony, and many were moved to tears by her courage and her articulateness. The statement spread like wildfire on social media and news sites, becoming a rallying cry against sexual violence and the societal attitudes surrounding it. It was praised as a blistering critique of rape culture and even heralded by some as a precursor to the Me Too movement that would erupt the following year. Now, we will talk a little bit more about the response on social media and everything to Chanel's statement, but unfortunately, there are some more statements that we need to talk about before we get there that were all given after Chanel gave that statement. Okay? So keep that in your mind. This is what people are saying after they heard what I just read to you, plus everything else in her statement, which I highly recommend everybody goes and listens to the whole thing. You can find it on YouTube. It's about an hour long. But this is what people were reading out after. So after Chanel, I don't know, Brock might have gotten to go first. His was really short, and she kind of covered the main points in what I read to you, so I'm not even going to read his because also fuck him. But his dad, Dan, was also allowed to give a statement, to the court that was supposed to be considered for the sentencing. Here is Dan Turner's statement. And I do believe I removed parts of it just to make it shorter, but you're going to get the vibe, okay? Honorable Judge Aaron Persky, I'm writing this letter to tell you about my son Brock and the person that I know that he is. First of all, let me say that Brock is absolutely devastated by the events of January 17th and 18th, 2015. He would do anything to turn back the hands of time and have that night to do all over again. In many one-on-one conversations with Brock since that day, I can tell you that he is truly sorry for what occurred that night and for all the pain and suffering that it has caused for all those involved and impacted by that night. He has expressed true remorse for his actions on that night. Living under that same roof with Brock since this incident, I can tell you firsthand the devastating impact that it has had on my son. First of all, interrupt for a sec. Horrible writer, this guy. Very redundant, just bad overall. I'm giving it a 0 out of 5 stars so far.
But
now,
also, I don't give a fuck what happened to your son because...
he did it to himself.
Literally.
He did it to himself. The consequences of your own actions?
Damn. Those hurt, right? Yeah.
Who would have expected that to happen?
Right. And he goes, I feel so bad for him for, reaping his confidence. Yeah, I don't.
So, me neither. So Dan continues saying, before I elaborate more, I would like to share some memories of my son that demonstrate the quality of his character. Brock has an easygoing personality that endears him to almost everyone he meets. Almost everyone except women is what it sounds like. Because, by the way, I didn't really go too deep into this because otherwise I'm going to have 7 episodes on Brock Turner.
Note, everything Kelsey is about to mention in the next minute or so is allegedly and has not been proven as fact.
But there are girls that come forward after the news hits about Brock saying just weeks before he was doing the same shit to them at a party, what he was doing to Tiffany, just getting
that doesn't surprise me,
being a creep,
even a little ounce. I'm not surprised at all.
He was also known to drop acid and he's painted in the court system and also in the media as this star athlete, super smart, really well behaved kid, but he wasn't. He was partying all the time. He was doing drugs. He was being a fucking creep. He just he was both things are true.
He was a functioning asshole, is what he was.
Yes, literally a functioning asshole. You're absolutely
a functioning asshole. He looked like he had his all shit together, but it was not together.
So Dan's saying in his statement, let me tell you more about my son, and he kind of I removed this part because it's just long and it's just stupid because he's just rambling on about bullshit that has nothing to do with his son sexually assaulting Chanel. He's talking about his academic and athletic achievements and how well liked he was by his teachers and his fellow students. He mentions Brock's scholarships to Stanford, his high GPA, and he's just talking like a father,
he's just
proud of
so
his
proud.
son.
Oh my God.
Yeah, his son's outstanding achievements. And it's more than halfway through the statement that he even starts talking about what Brock did to Chanel. But even then, he focuses on the impact that night has had on Brock. He says, as it stands now, Brock's life has been deeply altered forever by the events of January 17th and 18th.
As it fucking should.
Yeah. He will never be his happy-go-lucky self with that easygoing personality and welcoming smile. His every waking minute is consumed with worry, anxiety, fear, and depression. What are you scared of, Brock?
Yeah, wait.
You're the scary one here.
Right. Your welcoming smile. Get fucked, dude.
Yeah. You can see this in his face, the way he walks, his weakened voice, his lack of appetite. Brock always enjoyed certain types of food and is a very good cook himself. I was always excited to buy him a big ribeye steak to grill or get his favorite snack for him. I had to make sure to hide some of my favorite pretzels or chips because I knew they wouldn't be around long after Brock walked in from a long swim practice. Now he barely consumes any food and eats only to exist.
Boo fucking who?
Boo fucking who? Why don't you go cry about it,
Brock?
Yeah,
cry me a fucking wiva.
Yeah, cry me a wiva. Seriously. He said, these verdicts have broken and shattered him and our family in so many ways. His life will never be the one that he dreamed about and worked so hard to achieve. That is a steep price to pay for 20 minutes of action out of his 20 plus years of life. He's
my
calling.
My jaw's on the floor right now.
He is calling the now by California law nowadays, rape of a girl, 20 minutes of action. He just called it
as in she fucking enjoyed it. And
did no one review the statement for him before he read it? Like, did the attorneys not read this before he read it to the court? What a fucking idiot.
And okay, I get you're the parent and you can't believe that your child would ever do this. But he's taken it to a whole nother level of, I am still so proud of my son, and this is going to ruin his career, and blah, blah, blah. And who gives a fuck about the girl that got action for 20 minutes? Like, what the? You're the problem, Dan. You're the problem.
Dude, that's what I was saying about, like, when we were talking about, what, like, from Brock's perspective, what does he believe? I don't know Brock Turner's thoughts and feelings and yada, yada, allegedly. I allegedly fully believe that he knew what he was doing was wrong.
100%.
And he just was like, well, she's past, like, whatever. He had no idea, obviously, like, what a big deal it would become for him. Yeah. But I think he knew what he was doing was wrong.
100%.
But the point is like, the way that his dad says that makes me realize, like, how little this kid must have been taught about consent and, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, his dad is literally calling sexual assault of a intoxicated and unconscious woman behind a dumpster. Okay. The behind a dumpster does take it to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about other cases where, like, let's say this whole same scenario happened, but Chanel had passed out in a bedroom at that frat house.
Yeah.
Like, the behind a dumpster is like, when you hear that, you're like, Brock, don't even just shut the fuck up.
Yeah, like.
But, and that my heart breaks for every girl that has happened to, where, like, they were in a bedroom. Maybe it was even a boy that they had a crush on. Maybe they were flirting with him that night. Maybe they were kissing him that night, but they didn't want it. And they were either too intoxicated or they were passed out or something happened to them. And it's like, no one takes it seriously. And they say, oh, well, you're just waking up the next morning and you regret it. And it's like, no, I don't regret it. It never should have happened.
Right.
It was wrong. He knew it was wrong. And I was just so out of my mind that I couldn't, just because someone isn't screaming and fighting and saying, no, 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 doesn't mean that there's consent.
Right.
And
like, I didn't make that choice. He made that choice for me, even if I didn't say yes or no.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
and it's like they try to normalize these situations, and they're calling it 20 minutes of action is just the most disturbing, bone-chilling thing. And this isn't day one of, like, his dad hearing about this.
This was after her fucking.
He just heard the whole trial. 12 pages.
Oh, it's 12 pages.
He just heard the whole trial. He watched the whole trial. He just heard Chanel's statement. Like, he's got to know.
And he's still calling
happened.
it 20 minutes
and
of action.
And he's calling it 20 minutes of action. And that's like where it's like.
Where is his mom through this?
Being fucking quiet, apparently.
Yeah,
I don't know.
what the fuck?
I don't know. If I was his mom, I would probably be pretty fucking quiet too. Because I do get it. It's like, it's your son. You don't want your son to go to prison and stuff.
But also,
like,
if I read this fucking statement my husband was about to put out about our son and how I would be like,
dude, like,
who so fucked?
Who
like,
proofread this?
Right. Nobody. Absolutely nobody. That
oh my
sounds
God.
like nobody.
Guys,
I don't like
if anyone out there that's listening is an attorney, can you tell me if
what is the process?
Let me continue his statement.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Grandpa's here!
Hank's always helping out. Grandpa style. Now he's treating his prostate cancer with help from Xtandi enzalutamide. Xtandi 40 milligram tablets treats men with prostate cancer that has spread to other parts of the body and responds to a medical or surgical treatment to lower testosterone. Xtandi may cause serious side effects: seizure, a brain condition called PRESS, allergic reactions, heart disease that can lead to death, falls and bone fractures, swallowing problems, or choking that can lead to death. Stop Xtandi and get medical help at once if your face, tongue, lip, or throat start swelling. Tell your doctor at once if you faint, have a seizure, quickly worsening headache, decreased alertness, confusion, vision problems, chest pain or discomfort, or shortness of breath. Xtandi can cause harm to an unborn baby or miscarriage. Use birth control during and 3 months after Xtandi. Common side effects include muscle and joint pain, feeling unusually tired, hot flashes, constipation, less appetite, diarrhea, high blood pressure, bleeding, falls, fractures, and headache. Talk to your doctor and visit Xtandi.com.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
He says the fact that he now has to register as a sexual offender for the rest of his life forever alters where he can live, visit, work, and how he will be able to interact with people and organizations. What I know as his father is that incarceration is not the appropriate punishment for Brock. He has no prior criminal history and has never been violent to anyone, including his actions on the night of January 17th, 2015. Literally, no. And I can say that without adding an allegedly because he was convicted of sexual assault. That is sexual violence, my friend. He was violent to someone on January 17th, 2015.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't say the 18th, so maybe he was like, well, it wasn't until after midnight that he was violent. Like, I don't know. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah,
this man is such an idiot. He says, Brock can do so many positive things as a contributor to society and is totally committed to educating other college-age students about the dangers of alcohol consumption and sexual promiscuity.
Oh, and now they want him to be a fucking... mentor / fucking spokesperson.
He's gonna be the spokesperson for alcohol consumption and sexual promiscuity because
let's let the blind lead the blind. Okay, guys. No.
Jesus. By having people like Brock educate others on college campuses is how society can begin to break the cycle of binge drinking and its unfortunate results.
Could you fucking imagine if he became a spokesperson for alcoholism?
No, he literally tries to do this. We're gonna talk about we're gonna talk about it. I think Chanel shut that shit down with her statement about it, but like this is what's so crazy. Alcohol consumption, by the way, alcohol consumption does not lead to sexual assault or rape.
Yeah, they're not one and the same.
Is a rapist more likely to rape when they're intoxicated? Probably, because they're less thinking about the consequences for themselves because they're selfish bastards. But a normal good person, the alcohol does not turn a normal good person into an aggressor.
Yeah,
not an assaulter.
That shit stems way beneath the surface.
Exactly. He says probation is the best answer for Brock in this situation and allows him to give back to society in a net positive way.
We don't want anything from you.
Now,
we don't want anything from you, Brock. Keep whatever you're going to give to society and keep it.
We are going to talk so much about this sentencing. Like, we're only halfway through the sentencing, what I've written for the sentencing hearing, because I just realized I did put Brock's full statement in here, even though earlier I noted that I didn't. I must have changed my mind and added it. So we're going to go through it. We're going to go through the judge, his sentencing, and how he explains why he determined that sentencing. But we're going to hear a lot about, they're constantly talking about probation versus incarceration. And this confused me for a minute because I was like, well, the judge kind of says at one point that he's giving him probation, but he sentences him to jail and then like a couple years probation. Mm-hmm. And I was confused by that because I'm like, does that count as probation? And what I think it is, and I could be incorrect, is like jail and prison are two different things. Okay. A lot of people use them interchangeably, and actually I'm guilty of this. Like, I've heard myself do it on past episodes where like I'm saying someone was in jail for 5 years. Mm-hmm. That's not jail, it's prison. If someone is incarcerated for, and I think incarcerated might be specific to prison as well, but if someone is like a prisoner, I don't know.
Yeah, jail is like the waiting period, right?
Jail is 1 year or less, you go to jail. Oh. And I think it's like less security and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but if
like
you're sentenced to 1 year or more, you go to prison. And so they are different places. And like jails and prisons are like separate, like physically separate things.
Yeah.
So I think when they're talking about probation, they just mean 1 year maximum, like going to jail and then being on probation, versus incarceration, which would mean more than a year and he would go to prison. I'm not 1,000% sure on that, but that's what I was trying to figure that out. And that's my best guess as to why they're referring to it as probation, because the judge calls it probation, even though he sentences him to jail. So let's get to Brock's statement. We talked a little bit about this with Chanel's statement. I probably should have read this first.
Okay.
So Brock writes, "The night of January 17th changed my life and the lives of everyone involved forever. I can never go back to being the person I was before that day. I am no longer a swimmer, a student, a resident of California, or the product of the work that I put in to accomplish the goals that I set out in the first 19 years of my life." True. You are not. Not only have I altered my life, but I've also changed Chanel and her family's life. I am the sole proprietor of what happened on that night that these people's lives changed forever. I would give anything to change what happened that night. I can never forgive myself for imposing trauma and pain on Chanel. It debilitates me to think that my actions have caused her emotional and physical stress that is completely unwarranted and unfair. The thought of this is in my head every second of every day since this event has occurred. These ideas never leave my mind. During the day, I shake uncontrollably from the amount I torment myself by thinking about what has happened. I wish I had the ability to go back in time and never pick up a drink that night, let alone interact with Chanel. I can barely hold a conversation with someone without having my mind drift into thinking these thoughts. They torture me. I go to sleep every night having been crippled by these thoughts to the point of exhaustion. I wake up having dreamt of these horrific events that I have caused. I'm completely consumed by my poor judgment and ill-thought actions. There isn't 1 second that has gone by where I haven't regretted the course of events I took on January 17th, 18th. My shell and core of who I am as a person is forever broken from this. I am a changed person. At this point in my life, I never want to have a drop of alcohol again. I never want to attend a social gathering that involves alcohol or any situation where people make decisions based on the substances they have consumed. I never want to experience being in a position where it will have a negative impact on my life or someone else's ever again. I've lost 2 jobs solely based on the reporting of my case. I wish I was never good at swimming or had the opportunity to attend Stanford, so maybe the newspapers wouldn't want to write stories about me. All I can do from these events moving forward is by proving to everyone who I really am as a person. I know that if I were to be placed on probation, I would be able to benefit society for the rest of my life. I want to earn a college degree in any capacity that I am capable to do so, and in accomplishing this task, I can make the people around me and society better through the example I will set. I've been a goal-oriented person since my start as a swimmer. I want to take what I can from who I was before the situation happened and use it to the best of my abilities moving forward. I know I can show people who were like me the dangers of assuming what college life can be without thinking about the consequences one would potentially have to make if one were to make the same decisions that I made. Jesus Christ, dude, this is the most confusing state the way it's written.
Part of it's like, oh God, like he seems like he's remorseful. And then 2 seconds later, he's like, but like, really, it was the alcohol that did it. Like, he's blaming the alcohol for all of his decisions.
And he's saying, oh, I wish I never was a good swimmer, so I never could have gone to Stanford and this never would have happened. And it's like, why are you not realizing that this wasn't about Stanford? It wasn't about Chanel.
It wasn't about you making stupid fucking decisions.
It's about who you were as a person. He keeps talking about who I was before the incident. I'm like, Brock, this is who you were before the incident too. You just hadn't acted on it yet.
Right.
And I do believe he regrets doing this. I do believe he regrets doing this. I think it has fucked up his life that he regrets it.
But you know what?
I think he regrets it because it fucked up his life so much.
Yeah.
If this had never become such a national news story and stuff. And here's the thing is like, you can regret it all you want and say you're remorseful, but if you can't admit that you sexually assaulted this girl, I don't give a fuck. I don't think that's remorse.
Right. And
that's regret for what you had to deal with
and for
afterwards.
Getting caught. Yes.
You're just sorry you got caught. Really. Like if you cannot say this was non-consensual and she could not consent and I never should have touched her and
he's never going to say that because he still doesn't think that
No, he's never going to say that.
Yeah, dude, get fucked.
Exactly. So he's going on and on. I'm going to skip some of this because it is a little bit. Actually, I'm already more than halfway through it. So let's just keep it rolling. I want to show that people's lives can be destroyed by drinking and making poor decisions while doing so. One needs to recognize the influence that peer pressure and the attitude of having to fit in can have on someone. One decision has the potential to change your entire life. That's where Chanel, like in those points, she brings up, she's like, to change an entire life. She goes, your life, yours, singular. What about mine? Like you changed 2 lives, all of that. Because literally he is talking about his life in this statement. This decision changed my entire life. It's like, well,
I can't
you're the one that made the decision.
I haven't gone to school. I moved. Like, yeah, dude. That's because those are called consequences from your shitty actions, my dude.
Like, if this were me, I would not be talking about myself right now. I would just be talking about Chanel the whole time. Like, I'm so sorry.
Right.
And here's what I heard
taking
you
accountability for it. He's not taking accountability at all.
He continues, I want to demolish the assumption that drinking and partying are what make up a college lifestyle. I made a mistake. I drank too much and my decisions hurt someone. But I never meant to intentionally hurt Chanel. My poor decision-making and excessive drinking hurt someone that night, and I wish I could just take it all back. If I were to be placed on probation, I can positively say, without a single shred of doubt in my mind, that I would never have any problem with law enforcement. Before this happened, I never had any trouble with law enforcement. Pause. Chanel talks about in her book, before this happened, there was one night where like he had a bunch of beers in his backpack and like a cop saw him drinking a beer. And obviously he was too young to be drinking a beer. And he ran from the cops. Now he did get away, but people testified about this in court. So he's like, I never had any trouble with law enforcement before this. It's like, no, you just weren't caught.
Because you never got caught.
You just weren't caught.
Exactly.
You're acting like, oh, I never did it. Which, by the way, I know a lot of good people who have run away from the cops or have had a backpack full of beer and they're too young to drink. I'm not saying that makes you a bad person. I'm just saying it's like, think about what you're saying before you say it, Brock.
Right.
But
also, like, Brock's dad said the exact same thing.
Exactly.
Like, he was never like this. Like, sir.
Well, because they have a picture to paint of this perfect, oh, it's just one mistake. It's like they're trying to paint him as like this is out of character
this
for
was just
him,
an accident,
but it
and
wasn't.
He's a starved person. Yeah,
this was part of his character,
right?
And I hope it's changed from all of the consequences. I hope that has changed him,
right?
But we're going to talk about some recent stuff. He didn't do anything, not that we know of, to a woman, but we're going to talk about it.
Okay.
He said, I've been shattered by the party culture and risk-taking behavior that I briefly experienced in my 4 months at school. I've lost my chance to swim in the Olympics. I've lost my ability to obtain a Stanford degree. I've lost my employment opportunity, my reputation, and most of all, my life. These things force me to never want to put myself in a position where I have to sacrifice everything. You're not sacrificing anything. It's being taken away from you.
Yeah,
again,
you're right.
I would make it my life's mission to show everyone that I can contribute and be a positive influence on society from these events that have transpired. I will never put myself through an event where it will give someone the ability to question whether I really can be a betterment to society. I want no one, male or female, to have to experience the destructive consequences of making decisions while under the influence of alcohol. I want to be a voice of reason in a time where people's attitudes and preconceived notions about partying and drinking have already been established. I want to let young people know, as I did not, that things can go from fun to ruined in just one night. I would like to edit that sentence. This is what Brock should have said. I want to let young people know that you can take things from fun to ruined with just one rape.
Right.
I like that better.
Right.
So we're going to get to the judge's statement about all of this, but what I want to talk about is Brock is making statements in court. He's making, like, his attorneys are making statements that he wants to, like, go to college campuses and warn people about the dangers of, and he uses these two terms of partying, college party culture, and sexual promiscuity. And that's the thing, is he's blaming this all on the drinking. And he's saying, I'm going to better society now because I've learned my lesson about what drinking does, which this is not what drinking does, and I'm going to help people.
No.
It is insane. Right. It is insane. And Chanel, and that's where, like, Chanel in her statement, she was like, she says some stuff that surprised me about, like, Brock, I want you to go, let's go live our lives. Like, you go live your life. You be a better person. You better society. But don't sit here and fucking tell me that you're going to do it by going to college campuses and warning them about the dangers of drinking. She goes, she said something along the lines of, if you do that, I'm going to follow you and give a follow-up presentation every single time. And it's like, dude, I love her. First of all, she's hilarious. Like, she's so eloquent.
I was going to say, she gets her point across in, like, such a, like, lighthearted way that is, like,
but it's piercing. She just says it in this way that it's like, that's exact. And actually, she talks about in her book how after all of this happened, she got a lot of letters from, like, of survivors of sexual assault that were like, you put into words what I've never been able to articulate. Like, these things that I've been feeling that I couldn't even, like, put into words. Like, you put it down on paper and just explained it perfectly. And, like, they're writing to her, like, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And she talks about how after her statement was released, she was so surprised by the outcome. And that was the first time, seeing millions of people read it and getting all of this feedback. The vice president, Joe Biden was vice president at the time. He wrote a letter to her and it basically just released it to the public because it was to Emily Doe, basically.
Yeah.
And just saying like, thank you. You know, I think that you are going to help a lot of people with this. She was getting all of these letters that were sent to, I believe, her attorneys and given to her because like the attorneys would go through them to like make sure that they were good letters.
Yeah.
And she said that that was the first time that she felt like proud to be Emily Doe.
Aww,
and
that gave me chills.
Yeah. And she's like, that was the first time, you know, I had always been keeping Emily Doe so separate from myself, this whole situation separate from who I was. And that was what kind of helped her realize that Emily Doe is a part of her and that this situation is a part of her and she's better for it now.
Right.
Not that anyone not that she needed this in any fucking way, shape, or form, but that like she can see
the light at the end of the tunnel of this whole situation.
Yes, and she could do something good by having Emily Doe be a part of her. She could do something good for the world and make the world a better place. And huzzah to Chanel.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Now, despite the guilty verdicts on multiple felonies and the heart-wrenching testimony that Chanel gave, the judge's sentence for Brock Turner stunned and outraged the public.
Impact confirmed. The Slayer has been activated.
Demonic threat level increasing.
Hold the line!
All the power of hell cowering before one man.
id Software presents Doom, The Dark Ages. Available now on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC.
Rated M for mature. Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
On June 2nd, 2016, Judge Aaron Persky sentenced Turner to just 6 months in county jail, plus 3 years of probation. In explaining this decision, Judge Persky cited Turner's youth, his clean criminal record, and the severe impact a prison term might have on the 20-year-old, seemingly expressing more concern for the perpetrator's future rather than the victim's suffering. The sentence was a far cry from the 6-year prison term that Santa Clara prosecutors had urged. Because remember, he was facing up to 14 years behind bars. The prosecutors were asking for 6 years, and he was given 6 months.
That's insane.
Now, despite the fact that he did not admit to the crime, he was still given this like very lenient sentence, even though he was still denying it.
Yeah, he's saying, I'm not guilty, not guilty.
Exactly. Now, normally I would kind of stop there. Like, I've given you this overview of why the judge says he did this. But I think in this case, this is where this really fucking blows up worldwide, was this sentencing. No one could believe it. Like, everybody was shocked by this. And for that reason, I want to dive deep into the judge's explanation of why he gave this sentence, because I think that it is so integral to the story. And these are details that I think they're often glossed over, which for some cases it's appropriate. It's like you get the gist with just that.
Yeah.
But for this case, spoiler alert, Judge Aaron Persky is eventually ousted from his position as a judge over this sentencing. He was the first judge to be removed from his position in 86 years in California. Jeez. And there's a lot of debate about whether that was good or bad when it comes to like the ramifications on the justice system.
Yeah.
But because of that, I think the details are really important here. So,
you know what? I love to see it though, because
yeah.
Because what the fuck?
Yeah. And you're going to, some of this is shocking when you read it. So here are some experts from what Judge Fuckface told the court that day. To be clear, I did cut out like probably about half of what he said, and I always like to lead with that. So like as I'm reading all of these statements, I'm cutting stuff out to make it shorter.
Yeah,
but also
keep that
like
in mind.
I don't know if you guys can tell, but I do have like an inherent bias about this case, about whose sides I'm on. It's Chanel's, and I'm not on the judge or any of the Turner sides. So like I do recommend that you know, before you form opinions or whatever, like go read the full statements.
Yeah.
I'm giving you as many of the facts. I'm trying to give you as much. I'm giving you as much of the other side. It's just not looking good for them. Like when you say 20 minutes of action,
I can only give you so much.
Like,
you know?
dude, like I can't. I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So. He says, so the judge says, as I indicated, I will announce a tentative or indicated sentence and then give counsel a chance to respond. And as I'm sure everyone in the court can appreciate, and as was stated several times today, it is a difficult decision. And I just want to, before I give my tentative decision, read something from Chanel's statement, which I think is appropriate. He does read a couple different parts from her statement. I just cut it down. He said, she writes, quote, "You should have never done this to me. Secondly, you should never have made me fight so long to tell you you should have never done this to me. But here we are. The damage is done. No one can undo it. And now we both have a choice. We can let this destroy us. I can remain angry and hurt, and you can be in denial, or we can face it head on. I accept the pain, you accept the punishment, and we move on." End quote. So as she writes, the damage is done. The role of the court at sentencing is to essentially follow the roadmap that our justice system set out for the court in sentencing decisions. It's not completely an unbridled discretion. It is constrained by factors that are contained in the rules of the court. And so I've tried to do that to the best of my ability. And my tentative decision is to grant probation as recommended by the Adult Probation Department, with the defendant to serve 6 months in county jail and to comply with the recommendations of probation as contained in the report, as will be slightly modified. Again, Judge, have someone proofread this. You're about to use Chanel's own fucking words against her and be like, well, see, Chanel says we should all move on from the situation, so let's only give him, like, literally,
you're the judge, brother. Like, what?
Guys, have people proofread this stuff. Have people, like, and Chanel talks about that in the book. She's like, he's literally, like, citing her words and then using it to back up why he's giving a lenient sentence. She's like, I don't know, like, where you got that from, but, like, that's not what I fucking meant. So he says, I understand that as I read that Chanel's life has been devastated by these events, by not only the incidents that happened, but the criminal process that has had such a debilitating impact on people's lives, most notably Chanel and her sister. And also the other factor, of course, is the media attention that has been given to this case, which compounds the difficulties that participants in the criminal process face. So I acknowledge that devastation, and not only the incident, but the criminal proceedings, preliminary hearing, trial, and the media attention given to this case has in a way sort of poisoned the lives of the people that have been affected by the defendant's actions. And in my decision to grant probation, the question that I have to ask myself again, consistent with the rules of the court, is state prison for this defendant an antidote to that poison? Is incarceration in state prison the right answer for the poisoning of Chanel's life? And trying to balance the factors in the rules of the court, I conclude that it is not, and that justice would best be served ultimately with a grant of probation. Let me go through the rules of the court, because there is limitation on probation eligibility, and that's due to the charge of Penal Code Section 220. And the pursuant Penal Code Section, blah, 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 this won't mean anything to anyone unless you're a California attorney. He says this is a case where probation is prohibited except in unusual cases where the interest of justice would best be served. And what Chanel writes about this in her book is she's basically like, this isn't an unusual case.
Right.
This happens on college campuses all the fucking time. Mm-hmm. And she said probation is prohibited except in unusual cases. What about you know what's unusual about this case is that she was found behind a dumpster and not in a bed.
Literally.
Or not in a bathroom at a party. That's the only thing unusual. And if anything, it is more unusual in a way that you would think it would lead to a harsher sentencing. Not that it should. It is the same crime. But if anything.
What constitutes as unusual?
What is unusual about it that makes you think there should be a lighter
sentence? Right.
It's like, because the media attention? Well, guess what? The media attention has nothing to do, like, it's not part of the fucking court system. It's not a sentence that is given. Like, you still have to do what the law
tells
Ted
you
Bundy
to do. A lighter fucking sentence because he had so much fucking media attention. You know what I'm saying?
Literally, that is such a good comparison. It's like,
could you imagine if that happened? I mean,
like,
granted, he did murder women, but That's like saying, oh, yeah, let's give him a lighter sentence because of so much media attention. Like, what the fuck?
Literally, exactly. You are so right about that. It's like, it doesn't matter. The media is giving it attention because it is so fucked up.
Yeah.
The situation is so fucked up. That's why it's getting more attention. And I just think that, like, that should not be considered in sentencing. Like,
No.
I understand that sometimes that can affect the trial, and, like, you want to make sure they're getting a fair trial and all of those things. But, like, go cry me a wiva, okay, about the media
Cry me a
attention.
fucking wiva.
Cry me a fucking river. So, from my understanding, when the judge is making a decision, they have to go through the rules of the court. So, for different types of charges, there is basically a list of items that the judge is supposed to take into account when determining what they should set the sentence as for that conviction, for that charge.
Okay.
Now, he had 3 felony charges. And so the judge is going to go through these items that he's supposed to take into account that are either going to say leaning toward, like, points going towards a lighter sentence or points going towards a heavier sentence type of thing.
Okay.
And so there are guidelines for this. The judge just can't say, well, you know, whatever, this is whatever the fuck I want. You know, that's not how this works.
Right.
So he says, and so one criteria which was mentioned in the probation officer's recommendation related to a bunch of letters and numbers, which states, quote, the fact or circumstance giving rise to the limitation on probation is, in this case, substantially less serious than the circumstances typically present in other cases involving the same probation limitation, end quote. So this was written by the probation officer's recommendation to the court. He is saying that there are other cases involving the same probation limitation because these charges, they're felony sexual assault charges. You're normally limited. You cannot give probation for these cases.
Yeah.
It's not allowed. It's not a thing, except in unusual cases. And what the probation officer's recommendation stated is that in this case, the circumstances surrounding this case are substantially less serious than the circumstances typically present in other cases. Therefore, they're considering this an unusual case. Again, what the fuck are you guys talking about?
Yeah, what are you smoking?
What are you smoking? Like, I genuinely don't understand what this argument is. And I think there is something I'm missing of, like, what their reasoning for that is, but it just makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
So he continues, the probation officer alluded to, I believe, the fact that alcohol was present and concluded that this would be a basis for overcoming the statutory prohibition of probation. Okay, so they're saying it's alcohol. I still don't. That makes 0 sense to me. I'm sure so many sexual assaults and rapes are committed by people who are under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Like, that can't be that unusual, but Who knows? I'm not a judge. He says, I'm not relying on that circumstance. I think an argument can be made to that effect if you had a data set of violations of Penal Code Section 220A. My data set is small, even though I used to be a prosecutor and I've been on the bench for a while. But that data set sometimes involves defendants who have had no alcohol in their system. And the argument can be made that it's more morally culpable for someone with no alcohol in their system to commit an offense like this than with someone who was legally intoxicated at the rate of 0.16 or so. So they're saying
he's basically agreeing with Brock Turner and his dad that alcohol was the reason that he did this.
He is saying that because Brock Turner was so drunk, he holds less moral culpability than if he had done this while he was sober.
Yeah, see, that's fucked up.
And hey, guess what? We're not talking about moral culpability, really.
No.
You know what we're talking about? Legal culpability.
Uh-huh.
Sexual assault.
Yeah.
Rape is rape.
Apparently
I don't understand.
Apparently not to Persky.
Not to Persky, apparently. So he continues, but it requires the facts or circumstances be substantially less serious than the circumstances typically present in those types of cases. And I'm not sure that it really reaches, in this case, that level of substantially less serious, and I'm not relying on it. What I am relying on to overcome or at least consider probation in this case is rule number, letters and numbers, which is where a defendant is youthful and has no significant record of prior criminal offenses. So when that is the case, and that is the case here with Mr. Turner, it allows the court to further explore under Rule of Court 4.414 whether probation should be granted or denied. So I think there is some weight that should be given to the fact that a defendant who is, albeit voluntarily intoxicated, versus a defendant who commits an assault with intent to commit rape, a completely sober defendant, there is less moral culpability attached to the defendant who is legally intoxicated. That's as a comparative measure. But I don't attach very much weight to that. The second factor is whether the defendant was armed with or used a weapon, and that is not applicable here. So he's just saying less moral culpability. He's also young, and this will have a bigger effect on his life than if he was older, whatever. Less moral culpability because he was young and he doesn't know. Was
okay, but
whatever.
Like 6 months, really?
Dude, 6 months jail time, 3 years probation.
Still.
I agree. He says the third factor is the vulnerability of the victim, and the victim in this case was extremely vulnerable. That's an element of the crime with respect to counts 2 and 3, but not with respect to count 1. So I have considered that.
I hate this.
So they're saying Brock is less morally culpable because he was so intoxicated. And so that points towards lenient sentence. Then they're saying the victim was also super intoxicated, so she put herself in a vulnerable position. So Brock Turner gets to make mistakes and get fucked up and commit sexual assault, but Chanel Miller gets drunk and someone else does this to her, and this is now partially her fault because she put herself in a vulnerable state. Legal, again,
make fucking sense. I don't see how it does.
The math has never mathed less for me. I have to tell you that. So he continues, whether the defendant inflicted physical or emotional injury, like this is something they have to consider. And as we've heard today, as I heard at trial, there was both physical and devastating emotional injury inflicted on the victim. That weighs obviously in favor of denying probation. 2nd through 5th, because when you hear like 1, 2, 3, and 4, like these points, we're going to like start back at point 1 because we're going through 3 different charges. Okay. So 2nd through 5th, you have to take into account degree of monetary loss to the victim, which is not applicable. Number 6, the defendant was an active participant in the crime. That would weigh in favor of denying probation. Number 7, whether the crime was committed because of an unusual circumstance, such as a great provocation, which was unlikely to occur, not applicable in my mind. That's what he said.
Mm-hmm.
This episode is brought to you by Principles. Are there limits to the U.S. government's debt growth? What will happen if the debts are not curtailed? What should policymakers or investors do? Those are urgent questions that legendary investor and New York Times bestselling author Ray Dalio addresses in his new book, How Countries Go Broke: The Big Cycle. The book comes out in June and is available for pre-order today, wherever books are sold.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
Clorox Sentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Sentiva, available in Clorox Sentiva Lavender Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
8, whether the manner in which the crime was carried out demonstrated criminal sophistication or professionalism on the part of the defendant. And this was not. Mr. Turner's actions on that night did not demonstrate criminal sophistication. So again, this is points towards leniency because they're saying he's a fucking stupid fuckface. And so he can't get away with things. I don't know, like, why does criminal sophistication matter? I'm not 100% sure, but okay, whatever. This is what the court says, so we should take it into account. I agree with that. I just think the way he's weighing some of these things doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Number 9, whether the defendant took advantage of a position of trust or confidence to commit the crime. I don't believe that was present.
Well,
I guess technically, sure. The next factors in that rule of court, I'll just go through these. The first is prior record of criminal conduct, whether as an adult or juvenile, including the recency and frequency of prior crimes and whether the prior record indicates a pattern of regular or increasingly serious criminal conduct. That's favorable for the defendant. There's no criminal convictions. And also, I have considered the character letters that have been provided by Mr. Turner's friends, family, which indicate a period of essentially good behavior. The second factor is prior performance on probation or parole and present probation or parole status. That is not applicable. The third factor is a willingness to comply with the terms of their probation. I find that to be favorable as expressed by the probation officer and relayed in the report. I think there will be willingness of Mr. Turner to comply. The fourth is the ability to comply with reasonable terms of probation. He says Mr. Turner is going to be able to comply. Number 5 is the likely effect of imprisonment on the defendant and his or her dependents. Obviously, a prison sentence would have a severe impact on him. Boo-hoo.
Yeah.
And that may
Cry me a fucking river.
Cry me a fucking river. And that may be true in any case. I think it's probably more true with a youthful offender sentenced to state prison at a young age. So he's saying it's especially true in this case. Poor Mr. Turner. Now, number 6. Number 6 are the adverse collateral consequences on the defendant's life resulting from felony conviction, and those are severe. And they're severe in a couple of ways. One, with respect to Penal Code Section 290, registration that he'll be subject to for life. Talking about the sex offender registry, basically. And secondly, with respect to the media attention that's been given to this case, it has not only impacted the victim in this case, but also Mr. Turner, where in certain cases there is no publicity, then the collateral consequences on those on the defendant's life can be minimized. Okay, but also you just said that Chanel's life has been impacted by the media attention more than a regular case too. So has Brock's. I agree. Those are both true. Mm-hmm. Does that not cancel it out? Maybe that shouldn't be taken into fucking consideration when sentencing him. Like, she's been more affected and he's been more affected. So, like, I don't fucking get it.
Yeah, I don't either.
And so here we have, I think, significant collateral consequences that have to be considered. And I think that Chanel made a good point, which is, well, if you had someone who wasn't in the fortunate circumstances that Mr. Turner had found himself in his youth, that it shouldn't count against them. So don't stop talking about Chanel when you're explaining why you're going to give him a lenient sentence. It pisses me off.
Yeah, like they're doing her any favor whatsoever.
Yeah. So he says, I think you have to take the whole picture in terms of what impact imprisonment has on a specific individual's life. And the impact statements that have been, or really the character letters that have been submitted, do show a huge collateral consequence for Mr. Turner based on the conviction. So basically the judge is like, well, if he's in prison, he's going to lose so much. There's so much for this guy to lose. And it's like, well, if he was, a poor guy that didn't go to college and whatever, he has less to lose. So you're okay with giving him a heavier sentence? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? I don't understand this. So anyway, number 7 is whether the defendant is remorseful. And that's maybe one of the most conflicted and difficult issues in this case, because Mr. Turner came before us today and said he was genuinely sorry for his pain that he caused.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, to Chanel and her family.
Please don't send me to jail.
Yeah. And I think that this is the judge's words, verbatim. And I think that is a genuine feeling of remorse.
Oh.
This is where we're all going to get really pissed, okay?
How
if we're
long
not
has this
mad
man
yet.
been a judge? Because does he know the fucking difference between remorse and guilt?
No, and he's going to say that Chanel doesn't recognize what remorse is.
Okay.
You ready for this? He says, so let me just back it up a sentence. He says, and I think that is a genuine feeling of remorse. Chanel has stated that he hasn't really taken responsibility for his conduct. And I think that at one point she basically wrote or said that he, quote, just doesn't get it, end quote. And so you have Mr. Turner expressing remorse, which I think subjectively meaning from Brock's perspective, is genuine. And Chanel not seeing that as a genuine expression of remorse because he never says, I did this. I knew how drunk you were. I knew how out of it you were, and I did it anyway. And that, I don't think that bridge will probably ever be crossed. So he's not taking responsibility for what he did, is what the judge is explaining right now. And he's saying,
saying that's okay.
So, and then he's like, and Chanel doesn't see it as a genuine expression of remorse, but I do.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck if you do.
And he's like, I don't think he'll ever say that to her.
Yeah.
Like, what...
So do you think he's remorseful, or do you think he regrets the consequences of what he did? What the fuck are you talking about? Like,
Somebody proofread.
Dude, I think Judge Persky had a dad who would have called this 20 minutes of action. That's what I think, literally.
Yeah, I
what
think
are
so
you
too.
talking about? He's literally saying, he's like, yeah, I think subjectively Brock is really, really sorry for this. But also, I do realize that Chanel is pointing out that he will not say that he did this, he knew how drunk she was, and he knew that you were out of it, and that he will never say that. He said he will never say that. It's like, that's literally like the thing. That's the thing he has to do to take responsibility and therefore show genuine remorse. What the fuck are you talking about?
Right.
So he continues, Mr. Armstrong, which is, I think, one of the attorneys, Mr. Armstrong offered an explanation for that disconnect, which is that Mr. Turner, in his state of intoxication, sees the events in a certain way. And if he were to, just for the benefit of a lighter sentence or to pacify the court or the public, come in at a sentencing hearing or any other time and state otherwise, which I'm sure defendants do all the time, he really would not be honest. I mean, I take him at his word that subjectively, that's his version of events. I don't give a fuck what subjectively his version of the events were. A jury of 12 of his peers sat down and said guilty on 2 felony charges of sexual assault and 1 felony charge of intent to commit rape. So I don't give a fuck subjectively. We're talking about objectively, what did this kid do and what does he deserve to be punished for?
Right.
And Chanel, when she's talking about this in her book, she talks about the jury and she says, because basically the jury reads the verdict and then the judge asks for each count, asks every single one of them, is this verdict what you agreed upon? Mm-hmm. And every single one is asked separately and they all have to say yes. And so she writes it in her book, like, is this the verdict that you agreed upon? Yes, 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 yes. And she writes it out, the 12 yeses, and she does it 3 times, 1 for each count. And that's the thing is, I don't give a fuck about subjectively what Brock Turner's version of events were because he was in an intoxicated state. And it's not even like, sometimes I feel like they're trying to frame this as Brock's version of events versus Chanel's version of events.
Right.
And here's the thing is, Chanel doesn't have a version of events. She was unconscious. She didn't know what happened.
The only version of events were from the 2 guys that stopped Brock. I mean, obviously Brock is acting like he didn't remember anything either.
The other version of events, this is what it is Brock's version of events against the fucking evidence. And the evidence shows you that this was sexual assault and 12 of his peers found him guilty of it. So Brock's version of events are untrue. They are not true. They are not a lot. Whether or not he believes them, I don't know. Whether or not he believes them, I don't know. I'm not in his fucking brain.
Yeah.
But
doesn't matter.
They're
though.
not true.
Yeah, it doesn't
the
matter.
events is the evidence is all to the contrary of what Brock said. So what the fuck are you talking about? Oh, you know what? I think he really believes what he's saying. It doesn't. That's what it's like. It doesn't matter. So, and that actually, now I'm looking back at my script to continue what he says, and this is kind of what the judge says. So, like, where is the disconnect in this judge's brain?
Right.
Because he continues. He says the jury obviously found it not to be the sequence of events. Talking about Brock's sequence. Our criminal justice system relies on juries to evaluate facts. That's why we have 12 people doing it and to come to very difficult decisions about very specific factual incidents. And for some people who have sat through the entire trial, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who weren't able to sit through the entire trial, but the trial is a search for the truth. It's an imperfect process, and there's ambiguity at every stage of the proceedings. Once a jury renders a verdict, everybody is bound by that verdict. Okay? Everybody is bound. This is the judge's words. Everybody is bound by that verdict. Everybody must accept the verdict, including Mr. Turner. But I'm not convinced that his lack of complete acquiescence to the verdict should count against him with respect to an expression of remorse, because I do find that his remorse is genuine.
Okay.
Like, he's literally giving legal arguments one way and then just saying the opposite thing after.
Yeah,
like, that's
like,
how
I feel like
he
feels remorse, so...
He's like, we all have to accept the jury's verdict, and everybody's bound by that verdict, and everybody must accept this verdict. But also, I'm not convinced that
but I feel
the
bad,
fact that
so
he's not accepting this verdict that he has to accept, even though he's not accepting it.
Right.
What? Anyway.
It's not giving good.
The last thing he says, finally, the factor number 8 is the likelihood that if not imprisoned, the defendant will be a danger to others. I think that he will not be a danger to others. I think he has a good chance of complying with the conditions of the probation. The character letters suggest that up till this point, he complied with social and legal norms, sort of above and beyond what normal law-abiding people do.
How so, sir? Because
like trying to forcibly kiss
right.
girls at parties and
behind
being
a dumpster. I don't know how that would be. Please.
And I'm not saying that they should have sent him to prison for 14 years. Like, no. I actually don't think that. Even, like, 6 years is what the prosecutors asked for. Like, I think a few years at least. I don't know. Honestly, I don't. There's a reason that that's not my job. But, like, we all know 6 months is fucking insanity.
Yeah, that's... No.
Now, the public reaction to this sentencing was swift and intense. News of the 6-month sentence spread rapidly, and criticism poured in from all quarters. To many, this outcome confirmed their worst fears about the bias in the justice system. A privileged white athlete from an elite university had essentially gotten a slap on the wrist for a violent sexual assault. The Santa Clara district attorney publicly stated, quote, "The punishment does not fit the crime," end quote, and labeled Turner a remorseless predatory offender. Huzzah. True.
Huzzah.
On social media and in the press, outrage mounted. The case tapped into a broader frustration about judges being too lenient in sexual assault cases and ignited discussions about how victims are often devalued. Turner's sentence was widely cited as a textbook example of injustice and the influence of privilege. If he were not a white Stanford student from a well-off background, many argued he surely would have faced a harsher fate. And I think both of those things were true. I think the fact that he was white definitely was probably the biggest factor, but also the fact that he was well off, that he, you know, went to this elite university. And so I think race and like financial and social privilege both played a role in it. But I do think and this is just my opinion, but I do think race probably played the bigger role out of the two things. But it's like you just have this fucking trifecta of things that's, you know, and the point is that none of these things should make the sentence differ from person to person. You know, the punishment should fit the crime, no matter who the defendant is. And that's not what we see in this case.
No.
Now, protests and petitions sprang up demanding accountability. Within days, a Change.org petition to recall Judge Persky gathered hundreds of thousands of signatures. Stanford law professor Michelle Dauber led a campaign to remove Persky from the bench, arguing that his bias towards the Stanford athlete put women in danger. Editorials condemned the sentence, and politicians weighed in as well. Then, in September of 2016, Turner was released after serving just 3 months of his 6-month sentence, thanks to good behavior.
And who knew that was going to happen? Because I did.
And by the way, this was 3 months minus 1 day because he stayed in jail overnight the night he was arrested. So that counted as time served. So he got like 6 months minus a day. So he served, instead of serving 90 days, he served 89 days, which is just, it's really just the cherry on top of things.
Another slap
like,
to the face.
Chanel mentions this in her book. She's like, he wasn't even in there for 24 hours. Like he got out in the morning. He was bailed out in the morning.
Yep.
So,
but they counted that as time served. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, which they do. Like that's a normal thing. And like legally, that's what they should have done. But it's just one of those things.
It's just because
where
of
it's
this case where
it's just because it's already so short, and you're like, and just one more day less.
Yep.
Yeah. So he's let out after 3 months, and of course, like the public anger just reached this boiling point at the time. Demonstrators showed up at the courthouse and at Persky's home, carrying signs and chanting in support of sexual assault survivors.
Hell yeah.
The outrage was no longer just about one case. It was about a legal system that proved time and time again to favor perpetrators' rehabilitation over justice for the victims. And that's really the crux of it here, is when determining this sentence, they are thinking more about how this will affect Brock's future than about how he should be punished for the crimes he committed against Chanel. And of course, I understand that the court they have to take into consideration that list of things. But I just think the thought process behind the considering of those items was so flawed in so many ways.
Yeah.
And I just think that, I don't know. Allegedly, I think Persky's dad was the 20 minutes of action kind of guy, because I'm like, how does your brain work this way? I don't get it.
This episode is brought to you by Pluto TV. Are you looking for your next case? Pluto TV has all your favorite crime dramas streaming for free, which means suspicion is free, with countless cases to crack. Watch CSI, Criminal Minds, NCIS, Blue Bloods, Tracker, FBI, and SWAT. All for free from all your favorite devices. Feel the free. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
Get ready for Universal Epic Universe, featuring the wizarding world of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic, and Super Nintendo World. Now open at Universal Orlando Resort. Tickets and packages on sale now at universalorlando.com.
Experience a progressive lens engineered with AI from Essilor, powered by individual measurements of your visual behavior. A lens personalized to you by an Essilor expert. Discover Verilux XR Track and enjoy instantly sharp vision in motion and seamless transitions from near to far. Find your local Essilor expert today at Essilor.com.
Now, the backlash culminated in an unprecedented action, a recall election against Judge Persky. So in June 2018, Santa Clara County voters chose to recall Persky from the bench, making him the first California judge in 86 years to be ousted by voters. The successful recall reflected the community's resounding disapproval of how he handled the Turner case. So they literally held an election to decide. I don't know if this was like part of the normal election process at the time or if it was just this on the ballot, but like people literally went in and voted to get rid of this motherfucker. Now, many saw it at the time as this watershed moment, a public statement that leniency in sexual assault sentencing would not be tolerated. However, the recall also sparked debate within legal circles, with some defense attorneys worrying that it might discourage judges from exercising discretion for fear of public reprisal. I do understand that concern. Like, you do have to think about the wider ramifications of these things because it doesn't just affect Judge Persky. It doesn't just affect this case. Like, you're setting a precedent. That's what this is you have set this precedent that this is not okay. And I think in this case, it is valid. And I think I'm for it in this case. Mm-hmm. And I'm for the message that it sends and the precedent that it sets for the justice system moving forward. But I don't necessarily think that in every case where we're upset about the verdict that it should, like, I
mean, that would be every case then, you know, there's always going to be somebody upset about it.
Right. Like we talked about, I can't remember what case it was. Like, I'm kind of thinking it was Tyler Hadley, but I don't think it was. Where someone got a sentence. No, you know what it was Kristen from True Crime Creepers. It was the story she told me. Like, it's some of these young people who were like a part of the crime. They say that they didn't know what was going to happen. It was the whole thing. And they got sentenced to like 10 years in prison. And Kristen and I were both saying like, that's kind of a long time. Like so you don't want to set a precedent to where like people are going to get sentences that don't fit the crime. But I don't think that this does that. No. In my opinion. But I don't know. If you guys think differently and you are an adult and know how to express that kindly and maturely, like, let us know, because I would like to hear other opinions. But I think this sets a precedent that needed to be set. Yeah. In my opinion. Now, Judge Persky, for his part, maintained that he had followed the law and acted fairly given the probation department's recommendation for Brock. But the court of public opinion had delivered a different verdict. And when we put Persky on a trial by podcast, we also had a different verdict. But they say that Persky's career as a judge obviously like ended over this case. He was ousted.
That was his 20 minutes of action.
Yeah, his claim to fame, mm-hmm. Judge Persky. After being ousted, Persky got a job working as a girls' junior varsity tennis coach at a local high school.
Oh.
It's like can you coach the boys at least? Actually, I don't want you being around kids because the way your 20 minutes of action kind of guy is what it sounds like.
You're just validating that. Oh.
Now, he was quickly fired as soon as students and parents caught wind of who he was. And after that, I couldn't find anything else about what he's doing.
He changed his name and moved. He pulled an Amber Heard.
This destroyed his career and probably his life. Which is a lot. That's
big for...
That's a lot for... But, yeah, that's a lot. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel conflicted about that, to be honest with you. I think what he did was absolutely fucking wrong, and he's a fucking idiot. Like, judge fuckface in my book. Yeah. But that, I don't know. Interesting stuff. I don't have a strong opinion on that. I'm not really mad about him being ousted, though.
No.
But I hope he got some sort of other job.
Yeah, I hope he...
Are people going to get mad at me for saying this?
No, because I don't think... I mean, I don't know.
You know what? Mel Robbins, have you seen all those TikToks making fun of her? Let them be mad at me for not having a strong opinion about something.
Let me.
Now, meanwhile, Brock Turner returned to his home state of Ohio.
No.
We don't want him.
I forgot.
Send him back.
Yeah.
So
get him out of here.
he is released. He comes back to Ohio. He's now a convicted felon and a registered sex offender for life, meaning he has to like check in every 3 months. He has, he's
in the system. Yeah.
He's in the system.
He's in the system.
Registered where he lives and all of this stuff. He can't live within a certain distance from a school, like all of that kind of thing, which good.
Right.
His appeals to overturn the conviction were denied in 2018. And we're going to talk a little bit about...
Overturn what conviction, dude? You got like the lightest fucking sentence.
We're going to talk about the appeal in just a second, but I kind of wanted to talk about Brock now because he's faded from the public view for the most part. This all happened in 2015, but the impact of what he did and how the system responded only grew over time. Now, Brock now goes by his middle name. This is what I read online. So I cannot confirm the veracity of the next few things I'm going to say about Brock. This is like stuff that I found online and not like from reputable news sources. This is like what people are saying on Reddit and on TikTok and things like that. So these are just random people. And so I'm giving you context of something that might be true because I think it's important if it is true. Mm-hmm. But I want to make it very clear that I cannot confirm that these things are true. But this is what I'm hearing is he goes by his middle name, Allen, and he resides in the Dayton area. Now, no, please don't go find Brock Turner's address and go to his house and don't just... And I'm not saying this for Brock Turner's sake. I'm saying this for society's sake. Like, we don't need Robin Hood justice.
Right.
We need change in the justice system. Now, the reason I'm even bringing this up and like where he resides is because in 2022, women in the Dayton area started making TikTok videos like warning other women to be aware that he goes by Allen now and aware of like what he looks like now because they claim that he has been frequenting bars in the area.
Oh, what happened to your fucking let's go to campuses and be so like pro non-alcoholism and
Exactly.
I'm changed and I'm just going to be such a leader in society.
Exactly. That's what I'm fucking saying.
Oh, and who would have thought that he would not have done that?
Again, I cannot. This is totally allegedly. All of this is allegedly. I do not know if that's true. Like, I could totally see.
I could see it.
People, well, I could totally see it, but I could also, they saw someone who looks like Brock Turner.
Oh,
you know what I mean? I don't.
I could see both sides.
I'm not saying anybody's lying. I'm just saying I cannot confirm it. But if that is the case, it's like, are you fucking serious, my dude? Basically, these videos are just a call for anyone who sees him out to ensure that he is not left alone with any women, to let the women in the bars know exactly who he is, and to inform the bartenders and management so they can either like get him out of the bar or at least keep a watchful eye on him. Now, like I said, these reports have not been confirmed by reputable media or authorities. I kind of believe them, but these are all allegedly. But if they are true, this is a question for Brock Allen Turner, which is exactly what Emily pretty much just said. I thought all of this was because alcohol and drinking. I thought none of it was your fault and it all happened because you succumbed to alcohol and it ruined your whole life and you were literally going to tour around America warning the youth about the dangers of the alcohol and you were never going to drink again because you would never want to put yourself in a position again where you can ruin your whole entire life, just one life. You're not even thinking about Chanel's life. So if that is the case, why would you allegedly be drinking out at bars?
Yeah, what's that about?
I don't know. Maybe he's going out to bars with friends and not drinking. I don't know. I'm not trying to defend Brock Turner. I'm just trying to be realistic. Like, I don't know if this is true, so I'm not going to pass it off as the truth. Now, the Brock Turner case did not fade quietly. It became a catalyst for legal and social change. In the months and years following the trial, Chanel Miller's story helped drive reforms in California. Outraged by the notion that someone convicted of sexually assaulting an unconscious person could only get probation, California lawmakers proposed legislation to ensure it would never happen again. By September 2016, just 3 months after his sentencing, so like probably as soon as he's getting out of jail, the state passed legislation inspired by the case, which was California Assembly Bill 2888. And this was signed into law, mandating that judges must impose a prison term for sexual assault of an unconscious or intoxicated person. So nowadays, if this exact scenario happened in California, there's no way someone is getting sentenced to 6 months. They are going to prison for at least a year. This completely eliminates the option of probation for these crimes. And this just shows you that it's not just public outrage. The court system agrees that the sentencing was not fit for the crime, that the sentencing was incorrect for the crime. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to make it so other judges can never do that, which is
I love
for
to
the
see
world.
it. Yeah, I love to see that.
Now, another bill, which was Assembly Bill 701, expanded the definition of rape in California to include all forms of non-consensual sexual penetration, basically closing that loophole that had allowed Turner's crime to be charged as sexual assault rather than rape. Because if you remember, basically the problem was they couldn't charge him with rape because there's no evidence of penile penetration, because rape was defined by sexual, like penile penetration of the vagina or genitalia. And so basically they're saying it doesn't matter what is penetrated. It doesn't matter if it's a penis. It doesn't matter if it's a finger. It doesn't matter if it's an object. That is now considered rape, as it should have been from the beginning. Okay? So lawmakers made clear their intent, saying, quote, "This sends the strongest possible message that rape is rape. And if you do the crime, you're going to do the time." End quote. Rhymed and everything.
Snaps.
Huzzah. So that is a quote from Assembly member Evan Lowe, who was like a co-author of this bill. The legal changes directly born from the public response to Turner's light sentence were a significant victory for victim advocates. But of course, they had no effect on Turner's sentence or Chanel's case. Now, socially, the case became a touchstone in conversations about campus sexual assault, privilege, and the treatment of victims. In 2016, Chanel's anonymous letter circulated widely. Thousands and millions of people reading it, but thousands of people, especially young women, shared their own experiences of harassment and assault, often using the hashtag #IStandWithHer. And so this was before anyone knew Chanel's name. She was still known as Emily Doe. Her statement was released as Emily Doe. It was not released with her name. And everyone was, and it gives me chills because I remember this. Like, I remember this was probably the last year I was ever on Twitter, but I remember people using that hashtag #IStandWithHer. And then I think they started using like #IStandWithHim too, like to like help represent the male victims of sexual assault who a lot of the times don't get justice and sometimes don't even seek it because they don't want to come forward because there's a lot of shame, you know, involving like sexual assault with men. Now, the momentum only grew in 2017 when the Me Too movement exploded globally, fueled by women coming forward with stories of sexual abuse. Chanel Miller's case was frequently cited during this time. She was lauded as a symbol of resilience and a voice for the voiceless, even though she was still known only as Emily Doe. Her victim impact statement was compared to a spark that helped ignite a larger fire of awareness. And that comes from something Chanel said. I don't know if it was in the victim impact statement or just in the book. I think it was in the impact statement that she released after the sentencing, but I remember it was like to the judge about the short sentence he gave. She's basically like, hey, Judge Persky, by giving him that short sentence, you just sparked a fire.
Right.
And it gives me chills. She literally, I'm going to put a poster of her on my wall. Like, she's my fucking hero. I fucking love her. So they say it sparked a national discussion about how sexual assault victims are treated by both campuses and courts. And it resonated deeply amid the Me Too revelations because I haven't talked that much about it, but a lot of the times college campuses, they try to cover this shit up because they don't want their statistics to show a bunch of sexual assaults because they want people to send their fucking kids to these schools. And so a lot of the times they have been complicit in these cover-ups. One day I'll find a case where, you know, that exemplifies that. Survivors saw in Chanel's story a validation of their own pain and an example of how speaking out could galvanize change. As years passed, Chanel Miller gradually rebuilt her life. She devoted time to healing, continuing therapy, exploring art, and even performing stand-up comedy as an outlet. She does it all.
I want to be her when I grow up.
I literally, if you are ever listening to this, can we fucking grab drinks sometimes?
Yes,
like, I wanna like just hang. Not even like we could talk about this if you wanted to. We don't have to. I'm sure she's not ever going to listen to this because if I were her, I wouldn't want to be constantly consuming media about this case.
Yeah.
But like, I want to be friends. I just reading her book. She's the type of person that you're like, I want to be more like her.
Right.
She's so smart. She's so eloquent. She is so funny, and she's just the coolest. Anyway. And if we grab drinks, I won't mention the fact that I have a poster of you on my wall. I won't make it weird for us, okay? In September 2019, after enduring 4 years of anonymity, Chanel decided to take back her narrative publicly. She released a memoir titled Know My Name, boldly revealing her identity as the survivor of the Brock Turner assault. With that, Emily Doe finally had a face and a voice in the public eye. Chanel's decision to come forward was not easy. She knew that doing so would expose her to potential scrutiny, but she felt it was necessary for reclaiming her story. And like, what a way to come just fucking out of the gate.
Yeah,
Know
guns
my
blazing.
name. Know my name is just, I mean, you couldn't have picked a better title. It's fantastic.
It's iconic.
Yeah, it is iconic after being, you know, shielded from, it's just so good. It's like, you know his fucking name. I want you to know my name now. Because she explains, quote, I am not just Brock Turner's victim. I am not his anything, end quote. And snaps.
Yeah. Right, dude.
She's basically asserting her identity beyond the crime. By telling her story on her own terms, she transforms from a faceless victim into an outspoken survivor and advocate. The impact of Chanel's bravery has been profound. Her memoir became a bestseller and was widely praised for its unflinching honesty and literary merit. And those are two things that are, I think those are the two things for this book, for me, that made me absolutely love this book. It really I've read it once, the hard copy, and then I listened to it. I was telling Emily, I can't tell you how many times I've been driving down the street just crying, listening to this audiobook, even though I had already read it once. It is just so important for women. I just think every single woman, especially every woman in America, should read this book. The world needed someone like Chanel Miller, and it is enjoyable to read. You guys know how I feel. Enjoyable is never the right word, but enjoyable to read because it is so well written. It's not like if I wrote a book and it would just be like, she has purse, like it literally, like that's me. Not we talked about it in last week's episode, like the one review we got that was like not very eloquent but keeps me engaged. Like she is very eloquent.
Yeah.
Like it's really
she's eloquent
incredible
and engaging. So
yeah, she's eloquent, she's engaging, and she is brutally honest about her experience and her thoughts and her feelings. And it just really puts you in her shoes and the horror of this situation, what happened to her, about the trial of the rape kit, everything she had to go through, but then also the little things too that you don't think about when we tell these stories, like about how she felt when she would have to walk home, during the day, how she felt when she had to be home alone overnight. She would like blockade doors, and she didn't really understand why, because no one ever broke into her house. But for her, it was the fear of being asleep, because being asleep was to be unconscious. And it really, really is incredible. So readers around the world were moved by her account of trauma and of recovery. Chanel began to make public appearances, including a celebrated interview on 60 Minutes, where she spoke about the importance of believing survivors and the complexities of healing. And the two men who saved her, Frederick Arndt and Peter Johnson, sorry, I don't have their names right in front of me, they also did an interview. I believe it was 60 Minutes as well. You can find it on YouTube. I fucking love them. I love them so much.
Yeah.
They're amazing. Me and Emily were kind of laughing about before I mentioned to her, they are very handsome men, and we're not sure if they're single.
I would like to know. And inquiring minds would like to know.
Yeah, we want to know. Again, this is not important to the story or to what they did, but it's important to us. So
just a personal question.
Just a personal question. Just a little tangent.
Yeah.
Now, many noted how her case influenced campus policies and discussions of consent. Stanford University, which was a little embarrassed by the incident, to say the least, implemented mandatory training and banned hard alcohol at parties in the aftermath. More importantly, universities nationwide took notice and strengthened their protocols for handling sexual assault, recognizing the potential for backlash if cases were mishandled.
Wasn't there a documentary on Netflix about, like, I don't know if it was about this case in particular, but like this case blew up the sexual assault at colleges.
Yeah,
I remember
know.
there being like a documentary that like was pretty big about like sexual assault in colleges.
You'll have to look for it and let me know.
Okay.
I don't know that there. I would like to watch it, even if it's not specifically about this case, but
Okay.
I haven't seen any, to be honest with you. Now, in the broader cultural landscape, Chanel's voice joined those of other survivors in demanding accountability and change. The case illuminated disparities in how defendants are treated. It became, quote, notorious for its illustration of the race and wealth gap in sentencing, end quote, as NPR stated it. People asked, would a young man of color or with fewer resources have received the same leniency as Turner? And no. Like, me and Emily already kind of went in on this, so I'm not going to go on. I don't have much new to say in the last 20 minutes, but no, obviously not. And that's the problem, is the punishment should always fit the crime, and we should see a pattern no matter who the defendant is, no matter what race they are, what nationality, where, you know, their circumstances, where like their financial situation, where they went to college. None of this should be like taken in. It shouldn't affect. We should see the same sentence for all of them if they're committing the same crime.
Exactly.
The recall of Judge Persky also sent a message to the judiciary that communities would watch closely and take action if they felt justice was not served in sexual violence cases. And I feel like that's so important because judges, they work for the constituents. They work for the people that live in those areas, and their job is to make sure that justice is served. And when all of your constituents are firmly against that, when the court is firmly against it, so much so that they change the law to make sure it'll never happen again, you didn't do your job. So you're fired.
The constituents are not happy.
Now, despite all of this, in December 2017, Turner's defense team filed a 172-page appeal in which they sought to overturn Turner's 2016 sexual assault conviction. According to the New York Times, 60 of the 172 pages focused on how intoxicated Chanel had been that night, attempting to cast doubt on her ability to recall events and to recall consenting. So 60 out of 172 pages, that's more than 30% of this document, is about how drunk Chanel was. And they say that, you know, it's like, okay, they're attempting to cast doubt on her version of events. This marker, put a marker here. This may or may not be something I fucking said before this, but I think this is important, so I'm going to say it again. But if it's already on the other one, we'll cut this part out.
Okay.
They like are casting this as Brock's version of events versus Chanel's version of events. But what I want to remind everyone of is Chanel didn't know what happened to her for like over a week. She had no version of events. She was confused. She woke up in the hospital and was like, why am I here? She didn't know what happened. These are not Chanel's version of events. It's Brock's version of events versus the fucking evidence versus Arndt and Johnson versus the rape kit versus the debris and pine needles found in her vagina. It is versus the fact that they couldn't wake her up for hours after they found her. It is versus the evidence. So I hate the defense keeps painting it as his version versus her version. Like she says she didn't consent. She doesn't say she didn't consent. She says she has no idea what the fuck happened. And therefore, I obviously could not have consented to anything.
Right.
Like, they're acting like she said, okay, well, here's what happened. He was following me behind the dumpster. And I said, no, these are the evidence all points to Brock's version of events are fucking untrue. And that's what I want everybody to remember is it's not his version versus her version. It is the story painted by the evidence versus the story painted by someone trying to get out of trouble. So I don't know what you can say about that. Now, this appeal criticized the prosecution's repeated use of what they called emotionally charged phrases like, quote, behind the dumpster. I don't know. Behind the dumpster just sounds like describing a place.
Right.
What's emotionally charged about it is when you sexually assault someone behind the dumpster. That's what's emotionally charged about it. It's not the phrase that's emotionally charged. They're saying, oh, they shouldn't be allowed to use behind the dumpster because it makes the jury get riled up. It's like maybe just the fact of what your defendant did is what's getting the jury riled up.
Yeah.
How else can they describe what happened without explaining that she was behind the dumpster? And this goes back to what we were saying before about if this happened in a room at that frat house, would we have seen any justice for? Because to me, this is not justice wasn't done here. I'm glad that so much change has come out of this, but what Brock Turner got was not justice. But so they're arguing that this is an emotionally charged phrase. They shouldn't be allowed to use it. And they also argued that Turner's intent was mischaracterized as rape rather than what the defense called outer course. Now, Emily's giving me a really confused look when I use the word outer course.
Because what the fuck is outer course?
Well, that was really the question of one of the appeal justices, who was Justice Franklin Elia, who responded to the use of this term outer course by saying, quote, I absolutely don't understand what you are talking about, end quote.
I love that because what are you making up words?
Yes, because they're making that is just so funny. Like they're doing this whole appeal and they're like, well, actually, because one of the charges was intent to commit rape. To intend to commit rape of an intoxicated or unconscious person. And so they're saying, oh, he never intended to rape her. He only intended to commit outer course, which, by the way, still sexual assault. What is outer course?
Yeah, what does that mean?
They take about 15 minutes or so to explain it in this hearing, explaining that outer course referred to the fact that Turner had been fully clothed still when he was found on top of Chanel. So they claim that there's no evidence to prove that charge of attempt to commit rape because there's no evidence to prove that he intended to rape her. Like, because he was fully clothed.
Was like fucking half naked.
And but he was fully, basically their whole argument is his junk was still inside of his pants. And so they're saying he didn't intend to rape her. He only intended to commit outer course.
Okay.
It doesn't really explain to me what outer course is. I like dry humping. He's going to dry hump her. Is that what it is? Still sexual assault, by the way.
Right.
You can't dry hump an unconscious woman who's exposed behind a dumpster. But their argument is that wouldn't have been intent to commit rape. I don't know Brock Turner's thoughts and feelings. I'm not inside his head, and I don't know his thought process that night. I would venture to guess, allegedly, in my alleged opinion of allegedly his thoughts, maybe, probably, that he just didn't get that far. Mm-hmm. He just didn't get that far to where his penis was outside of his pants. I allegedly believe that he intended to get that far. And I don't even know if I have to say allegedly because he was convicted of intent to commit rape. Mm-hmm. But Chanel talks about this in her book and what it did to her reading this like outer course argument, because she's like, what it made me realize is that as my legs were, because when she was found, like the pictures of her on her legs are like far apart.
Oof.
And her dress is pulled up above her waist and her breasts are exposed in her dress. She talks about reading this appeal and this whole outer course argument and having the realization that the only thing that stood between Brock Turner penetrating her, or whatever the law described it as, was a zipper and a thin piece of fabric. That's all it was.
Yeah.
But 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. 10 seconds. And so it's like, thank God those guys came when they did, because who knows what would have happened. Now, I love that appeal, Justice, saying, I absolutely don't understand what you are talking about. It's so fucking funny.
Respect, sir.
That is so funny. I love it. Point is, I guess there's one more thing that the attorneys are arguing in the appeal. They're claiming that the court erred by excluding character witnesses who would have testified to Brock's good standing. I feel like we heard enough of that shit. I feel like we heard enough. They literally let like his old teachers testify, like people who knew him. I don't care what he was like.
Exactly.
That's separate from like whatever. However, in August 2018, a 3-judge panel of the California Court of Appeals unanimously rejected the appeal. Huzzah. Woo-hoo. The judges ruled that Turner had received a fair trial and that there was substantial evidence to support the jury's verdict. They were unpersuaded by the defense's semantic arguments about outer course and attempts to reframe the events. As a result, Turner's conviction stood, and he remains a registered sex offender for life. By the end of the decade, Chanel Miller had become more than just the girl behind the dumpster. She emerged as a leading voice, and by the way, that's how she's described in news articles when she was still Emily Doe or whatever. Mm-hmm. No one who is a real person actually ever thought of her as just a girl behind a dumpster. I don't want that to come off as like that was my terminology.
Yeah.
But she emerged as this leading voice in the movement to support survivors and reform how society handles sexual assault. Her formerly hidden identity was now featured in magazine profiles and on stages where she spoke. Each time she emphasized that while she was a victim of a terrible crime, she refuses to be defined solely by it. Her story, she hopes, stands for everyone who has been harmed and had to fight to be heard. Indeed, in the wake of her coming forward, countless survivors have said that Chanel's courage inspired them to speak up or seek help. And on top of her memoir, Know My Name, Chanel has also authored multiple children's books, which before this whole incident happened, that was like her dream, is she wanted to write children's books.
Oh my God.
And she fucking did it.
I love that.
Yeah. And she talks about in Know My Name, like very briefly, how she was concerned when this all happened that like if it was ever connected to her name, like, oh, no one wants to read children's books from a sexual assault survivor. And it's like, no, dude.
No, we want to.
We want to. So the Brock Turner case, actually scratch that. The Chanel Miller case remains one of the most widely known sexual assault cases, although misnomered the Brock Turner case often. Mm-hmm. But it is probably the biggest case of the 21st century in the United States, not really because the crime itself was unique, because sadly, incapacitated sexual assaults are all too common on college campuses, and we just don't hear about them. Sadly, but this is not why the case is so big. It's because of what followed. It's because two strangers on bicycles intervened to uphold what was right. And by the way, are a great example for young men and what men should be and how men should be and what strong men look like. Also, because it's about a young woman who found an extraordinary voice to reclaim power back from her attacker, and the public's outrage translated into concrete action. Action in the courts. We have redefined rape in California. We have set new standards for what punishments are appropriate for this kind of sexual violence. And in the end, what began as a horrific incident behind a dumpster became a turning point. It shined a spotlight on the flaws in our system and our culture, and it sparked reforms from California's laws to a broader understanding across America that victim stories matter. Chanel Miller's courage to come out of the shadows and tell her stories has left an enduring legacy, not just for Chanel, but for all women. As she wrote in her memoir, she refuses to be reduced to just one traumatic moment. She is not Brock Turner's victim. She has a name and a life, and she has reclaimed both. Today, Chanel's voice echoes alongside many others in the ongoing fight for justice and respect for survivors of sexual violence. The conversation her case ignited continues to influence campuses, courtrooms, and legislation. And for anyone who has read her words or heard her speak, her story serves as both a sobering lesson in how our society can fail and an inspiring example of resilience and change. The dumpster behind the Stanford fraternity, once a scene of silent suffering, has become, through Chanel Miller's courage, a rallying point, a calling point for all of us to do better, to believe survivors, and to ensure that no quote-unquote 20 minutes of action is ever seen as anything less than what it is, a life-altering crime. And with that, I want to leave us off by thanking Chanel Miller for being a lighthouse.
Huzzah.
Huzzah. And that's it for the day.
And that's the tea.
And that's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Mm-hmm. Chanel is a badass, and I hope to one day meet her or be anywhere near as much of a badass as she is.
Yes, she is absolutely incredible. And guys, like, just read her book. Like, I know you feel like I just gave you, I can't even tell you. Like, I did not do this story justice. Like, you have to read it from Chanel's point of view. So, with that being said, go buy her book, Know My Name. You can get it on Amazon. It's on Audible. It's on Spotify for free. Yeah, all of that. So, that court is adjourned.
Bye.
Bye. Now, if you guys love the pod, make sure you're following us wherever you're listening so you don't miss out on any future episodes.
And while you're at it, we'd be forever in your debt if you had left us a 5-star rating.
For more content from us, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Both are at A Trial by Podcast.
You can also follow us on our Facebook and join our Facebook group.
You can shop our merch by clicking the link in the show notes or visiting our website, atrialbypodcast.com.
A Trial by Podcast is a fully independent podcast. If you'd like to help support us, you can do so by donating through the link in our show notes.
The site we use for this is called Buy Me a Coffee, but don't worry, your donations will never be used for coffee or frivolous things, only for expenses related to running and growing the podcast. So thank you guys for your support.
Thank y'all. Huzzah.
Huzzah.